Good morning, my friends. How are you? Welcome to another edition of Behind the Mic with me, Mike Avery, right here in the Outdoor Magazine radio studio. And I am here to record this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. Playing around with some more filters, exposure, white balance. I think we'll leave it just as it is. Who's along with us so far this morning? Cliff is here. Good morning, Cliff. Tommy, how you doing, buddy? Always a pleasure. Thank you guys for joining me on this edition of Behind the Mic, as well as Craig Plowman. Craig, are you at work today or are you playing today? JT's, I think, at work. Bernie, I enjoyed the pictures of your grandsons. They look like they are outdoor fanatics. I love that. And they got that from you, didn't they? Mad Jack, good morning, my friend. How are you? Thanks for joining me on this edition of Behind the Mic. Again, here in the Outdoor Magazine radio studio. Got to be honest, today I think I'd just as soon be out in the woods. This first week of November is magic, isn't it? The bucks are stupid in this part of the state. Absolutely stupid. We like them that way. I like stupid bucks. Dwayne, good morning. Johnny Buller, the Bear Whisperer. Miss you, Johnny. How you doing, buddy? Working today, but hunting all of next week. Perfect. JT is at work. I hope you have a good day, JT. Captain JT, by the way. Oh, boy, last summer seems a million miles away now, doesn't it? With the boats and the fishing, and maybe it's because I didn't get out much. Going to have to change that for next year, for sure. So it is early November. What is it, the 5th, as we are recording this, or doing this live stream and recording this week's radio show. Does anybody else resent the fact that we just made it through Halloween, less than a week away, and already they want to push Christmas down our throats? Listen, I love what Christmas stands for, but I do not love everything else surrounding Christmas. The hype, the pressure, the ads, the more. It just seems like it's just a constant barrage. From Halloween, I feel like there's this great big giant vacuum at the end of the year. And they turn it on, whoever they are, they turn it on at Halloween, and then it sucks us faster and faster and faster to the end of the year. I say, look, just slow down, take a breath, enjoy where we're at. You know, it's a few weeks yet till Thanksgiving, and then it's a month till Christmas. Let's not start putting up trees and everything yet. It's a little too early, all right? At least in my book it is. Uncle Johnny, how you doing, buddy? So I'm out hunting the other night. I get a text from my brother-in-law, Uncle Johnny. He says, by the way, we're at your house drinking your bourbon. I'm like, yeah, cool. Rocky, good morning, buddy. How are you? You know I love the name. Ron, nice to have you along with us on this edition of Behind the Mic here from the Outdoor Magazine radio studio. I'll talk about who's coming up on the show this week here in just a couple of minutes, 13 minutes, 7, as I set up my clock. On the radio show, there are 4 segments per hour. The first one is 12 minutes, then it's a 13-minute, then it's a 7-minute, and we wrap up the hour with a 6-minute and 50-second segment. So I put those into a clock, a digital clock that counts down in front of me, so I know how far into the segments I am before we have to take a break. Because when it's time to take a break, the guys here in the studio, they don't wait for me. It's a hard clock, meaning if there is a break at such and such a time, there is a break at such and such a time. Now, before, when I was working with a previous network, and Johnny, that network was based out of Round Lake there on Lake up in Charlevoix, where we took the boat cruise a few weeks ago. I had floating breaks, so I had a little bit of room there. But I don't know how the affiliates ever dealt with that. It would have driven me crazy. Tim, good morning, buddy. How are things in South Carolina, besides warm and beautiful, I'm sure? Dwayne, Mike, if you don't mind, I was wondering about what 10-point crossbow you have. I bought the Darton Renegade 373 years ago. And that thing is heavy. I'm going to look for a new one next year. 373 years ago. That's an old crossbow. You should probably get the strings and cables looked at on that. Okay. What version of 10 point do I have? I can't tell you. I could have told you 2 years ago when I bought it. I can't tell you what it is now. I bought it 2 years ago at Jay's, and it was a new bow, but it was already a year old. Dwayne says, oh, it's a 370. I bought it 3 years ago. I kind of knew the 373 years wasn't right. So it's a 10 point. I wish I could think of it. I bought it at Jay's new 2 years ago, and it was already one model year old, which means I got a little bit of a break on the price because I didn't want to spend $2,000 on a crossbow. It was still expensive. It was over $1,000. I can't tell you what model that is. It's heavy. It's quite heavy. I have noticed that the reverse draw crossbows tend to balance a little bit better, but I personally am just a little bit uncomfortable looking into that string. The reason I went to a 10 point was I wanted a crossbow that I could cock and, more importantly, decock at the end of every hunt. I shot dart and crossbows for years and I loved them, but the only way you could decock a dart and crossbow was to shoot it into a target or shoot it into the sand or whatever, and I didn't like that. I talked with the folks at Dart, and this is a few years ago. I said, are you ever going to make a decocking crossbow? And they said no. Now, in fact, since then, Darton has quit making crossbows. They still make the compounds in Hale, but they've moved the infrastructure of the company down to Georgia. It's not the Turbo X, Craig. Those of you who know 10-point models, throw them out here, and it'll probably ring a bell with me here. But it's heavy. But I can decock it, and I really like that. In fact, did I hunt last night? No, I didn't hunt last night, but the night before, at the end of the night, just boom, 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 decock that thing and walk out. I like it. Tim says it's a cool 39 degrees at 6 a.m. Going to be sitting in the woods this afternoon. Good for you. Dwayne says a 370 I bought 3 years ago. I ended up I think I shot every dart and crossbow they ever made, and I loved them. I loved Darton. Darton has kind of abandoned Michigan, so I'm kind of going to abandon Darton. Not the Turbo X, Craig. Keep throwing them out. Tim says, I've been using my Tideweed ground blind. We love it. Not the Stealth. Not the Venom. That Tideweed's a nice blind. Personally, I like the Carnivore blind from Old Man. If you go to Jay's in Clare or Gaylord and use the Avery 30 promo code, you can get $30 off that. But I do like my ground blinds. I was sitting in a ground blind the other night. In fact, I've only sat in a tree stand, and it was a ladder stand, once this year. Good morning, Randy. How are you? Jim, nice to have you along with us, buddy. David, Jim, and Doug. We've got the two wards with us. Good morning, guys. Thanks for joining me. Brian, nice to have you along with us. I'm going to do a quick search on 10-point crossbow models. Ten-point crossbows, and I think mine's probably too old. Turbo X. Venom, no. Fury, no, that's a Wicked Ridge. I don't know, guys. I can't tell you. I like it. Not the Flatline. Not the Siege. It's right next to the Siege in the lineup. That's not the Havoc. I'm not going to be able to. It's not the Titan. I don't know what it is. It's going to drive me crazy now, though. Oh, anyway, they do have a lot of different ones. Uh-oh, Gabe just sent me a movie here. What is it? Did he shoot? Oh, shoot this thing, Gabe. Shoot him, Gabe. Shoot him, Gabe. Shoot him, Gabe. Gabe Van Wormer, send me a video right now. Nice 2.5-year-old 8-point walking in front of him. Gabe is hunting with a recurve. So is he going to shoot this thing or not? He let him walk. Oh, let's see who else is on here with us. Brian's with us. Joe's checking in from Germfast. Chris checking in from Kansas. They do have a lot of different ones. Randy, I did purchase your Mike Avery knife up at Rapid River on Monday. I talked to him about maybe doing a Wednesday night live there. They said they would contact you and see if they could make that work. Yeah, that's kind of, yeah. That there are a lot of holes in that statement right there. I've already approached them and yeah, that's probably not going to happen. Chris is on the show this week though. Rather be in the woods than at work, that's for sure. And it depends on who you talk to, Randy. Because I've been talking to Chris, the owner of 10 Point, about doing a Wednesday night live there. And it doesn't appear it's going to happen this fall. So, when they say they contact you and see if they can make it work, that's not exactly accurate. Tim, good morning, buddy. How are you? Corey's on his way to Southern Illinois. My son James right now is in Southern Illinois. My buddy Lanny is in Indiana. So it's a good time to be going out of state. But you know what? It's a good time to be right here, too. I hunted Monday night, and I saw one deer right at dusk. It moved like a buck, but I couldn't put a rack on it. It was pretty dark. Besides that, it was too far to shoot anyway. It was 46 yards. And the next morning, I was checking trail cameras, but just for the heck of it, I checked my front yard camera. We have a camera on the driveway, and there was a small buck, and we're right in town. In the middle of the night, a small buck walking across our driveway. And I was telling my wife, Denise, about that. And she said, well, there's a doe in the backyard right now. And I looked, and I said, I bet you there's a buck behind it. And I looked out the back room, and there was a nice 2.5-year-old 8-point tending a doe in the backyard. He had her trapped in the corner between a house and some arborvitaes. I mean, they're nuts right now. Later on, I saw that same buck chasing probably the same doe through the neighborhood. Crazy. Tim, Corey, Jerry, good morning, buddy. How are you? Amos says, I love when you visit the manufacturers on Wednesday Night Live. So do I. The problem with the Wednesday Night Live at the Rapid River is, number one, it's a pretty good drive to get up there, which is not that big of a concern. But 7 o'clock, their store is closed. I would like to have a Wednesday Night Live at Rapid River where the store is open and it's full of customers. And we could sell a bunch of knives. Tim almost got a beautiful 8-point yesterday with his bumper. John checking in from St. Louis. I saw speaking of St. Louis, I saw Mark Dupuis, the owner of Apex, at an event last week, and I won't go into details there. Some of you who know what's going on know what's going on. Brent checking in from the deer stand. Good morning to you, buddy. Tim, nice to have you along with us. Dustin said he saw that buck last week from your yard, a street over by his house. He's around, isn't he? I think I'd like to shoot him. I won't. Randy, I talked with the manager, can't remember his name, but he was talking about trying to work something out with the buck pole. Yeah, I'm not going to make it up for the buck pole. But we will talk. All right, listen, let me lead into the that, because that leads into the radio rundown this week. My first guest is Luke Pulaski of the Outdoor Conquest. Now, Luke has been down on the Detroit River jigging for muskies and getting them. I thought, let's take a little bit of a break from deer hunting to kick the show off. Then, Chris Durson of Rapid River. And what Chris and I are going to talk about briefly is, number one, I'm sure it's going to be their big buck pole that's coming up, but also putting a big push on now. And I said, look, Christmas can wait. But in the case of Rapid River, or in particular the Avery signature knife, if you're going to order one for Christmas, mine's dirty. It's got stuff on the blade. If you're going to order one for Christmas, do it now. Don't wait, because there's going to be a rush. And they will sell out of every knife in the shop. So that's what we're going to talk to Chris about. In a second hour, Chad Stewart, DNR wildlife biologist, on the whitetail rut. What is it biologically? What happens in the deer herd? How long does a doe stay in heat? How far will a buck range? What's the significance of a rub? What's the significance of a scrape? All those biological things about the rub. I think it's going to be cool. Then Sergeant Mike Mushar, DNR conservation officer, talking about staying safe and legal in the deer woods. Our Ask Avery segment this week, question comes from Otto Peterson. I think Otto's in Petoskey. He wanted to know about, because I had mentioned Moose Lift 1 and Moose Lift 2 when we traded turkeys to Ontario and got moose in return. Otto wants to know, how are those turkeys doing? Well, I will answer that question. And in hour number 3, Gabe Van Warmer, Full Quiver Outdoors, talking about hunting the rut, bow hunting the rut, and making the transition into firearm season. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. Okay, a couple of things I want to talk about. This week, let me go back to some comments here. Corey hit a buck. Oh, man, Gordonville and Homer. Not bad, I hope. Did he wander away or is he dead? Tim, good morning. How are you? Chris checking in from Horse Cave, Kentucky. Nice to have you along with us, Chris. Appreciate it. No better deer blind than your kitchen with piping hot coffee and a hot breakfast. Passing many small and medium bucks waiting for a mature one meat hunt around Christmas. Good luck to you, Dan. Okay. A couple of things. The leaves have dropped. I mean, there are a few leaves left, but basically the leaves are down. The rut is on. How much time do I have? Okay. My backyard beaver situation. Let's just say it's being addressed. And let's just say that half of the backyard beaver population is now gone. It's at the big beaver pond in the sky. Hopefully not much longer till the second beaver goes to the big beaver pond in the sky. Thank you, Jim Bade. Charlie Rude.
Good morning.
I thought John was going to be the guy today.
He is not.
So I'm blessed with you.
He is deposed elsewhere.
Oh, he's giving a deposition, huh?
Yeah. You know, Jonathan.
Yeah, it probably is. Okay, hunter comments this week. I've said this before, and I really believe this. I think the biggest threat to our hunting lifestyle is not the anti-hunters, but our fellow hunters who act like idiots. 2 examples. Last week, I posted a picture of a 2.5-year-old 8-point that actually was taken about a quarter of a mile from my family farm, our family farm, my mom's farm on the west side of the state. In fact, it's an area my brother used to hunt all the time. One of the neighbors shot a real nice heavy beam 2.5-year-old 8-point, and I posted it. And some idiot, some dumbass, got on there and said, well, that's a 2.5-year-old buck. You should have let him go. And I tried to be polite and say, well, I wasn't really that polite. I said, don't be a jerk. It's not your hunt. Let the guy take what he wants. And he came back and said, us big buck hunters know 100 times more than the rest of you guys. And I thought, oh my God, is this really what we want to do? You big buck hunters? Do you want to try to demean 90% of the hunters out there who aren't big buck hunters, or 75% or 50, whatever the number is? Is this where we are? So ban delete. I don't put up with that kind of crap. Another one was, I posted video from my elevated blind, my base camp, my old man base camp that I've got out overlooking state land and a food plot. And as I'm swinging across there, you can see my crossbow laying up against a shooting rail. And some guy made a comment, "Are you handicapped?" And I wanted to say, my only handicap is I have to routinely deal with idiots like you. That's how I'm handicapped. let's not feed on each other. You know, hunt your hunt, shoot what you want to shoot, but don't decide that you're going to be the person who decides what every hunter in the Michigan woods or beyond should be able to take. Please, no, thank you. So I will talk probably a little more than I should and with a little more passion than I should on this week's radio show, which is going to start now in about 10 seconds. So I'm going to change the focus of what I'm doing right now and talking directly with you and answering your questions pretty much. Ooh, let's go. Charlie's for real. But I will be back here tonight at 7 o'clock for another edition of Wednesday Night Live. Now, it gets dark early enough where you can go hunting tonight and be home in time to watch Wednesday Night Live. So there's no excuse. I expect you'll be back here tonight. Yeah, can't we all just get along? Mike, you're here. That's all that matters, buddy. All right, my friends, have a great day. I mean, truly a great day. I will be back tonight at 7 o'clock for another edition of Wednesday Night Live, where we will discuss more, including the whitetail rut and more. All right, my friends, have a great day. Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome. Welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across this great state of Michigan. I am here every week for 3 hours talking about the great outdoors, the history and tradition of hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping, and some wildlife issues and some conservation issues. We wrap up each show with some wild game cooking with Chef Dixie Dave Miner. I grew up in this lifestyle. To me, it is very important. I realize that we are outnumbered in our state today. There are more non-hunters and anglers than there are those of us who are active participants, but that's okay. Different things for different people. If you don't hunt or fish, God bless you. Just don't tell me I can't hunt or fish. That's the problem, right? If you are a non-hunter or angler, that's fine. And you say, look, if those guys want to hunt and fish, God bless them. That's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. But it's the people who say, I don't hunt or fish, so therefore, Avery and your buddies, you shouldn't hunt or fish. That's where I have a problem. And you know, I'm going to get ahead of myself here a little bit, but I think the biggest problem facing the outdoor lifestyle, in particular hunting today, is not the anti-hunters. The anti-hunters, we know where they're coming from. We can see them out there on the side wearing their tie-dye shirts and their long beards and their sandals, and we kind of know them, right? But we do. We know them. We know where they're coming from. We know what they want, and we can therefore try to protect ourselves from them. They're not the biggest threat these days, in my opinion. It is our fellow hunters and anglers who I think are the biggest threat to our way of life these days. What do I mean by that? I'll show you. I'll share a couple of examples from this past week. I posted on my Facebook page, a picture of a heavy beamed 2.5-year-old buck taken very close to the Avery family farm on the west side of the state. In fact, it's a honey hole my brother's been hunting in for 50 years. One of the neighbors shot that buck I'm talking about, and I posted a picture of it, and it was a really nice buck. Some guy decided he was going to be a jerk, and he said, that's just a 2.5-year-old buck, should let him go. Well, so I responded, look, don't be a jerk. It's not your tag. It's not your hunt. Please celebrate the legal harvest of all fellow hunters and give this guy the credit he deserves. And this guy came back and said, us big buck hunters know 100 times more than the rest of you people. Wow. ban delete, ban delete, ban delete. I'm not gonna deal with that kind of stuff on my Facebook page. So he's now gone, and I don't have to hear that kind of comment from him anymore. But I hear it from enough people, enough hunters, that it really gets to me. Again, the comments from the anti-hunters, I expect that. What I don't expect is fellow hunters to turn on each other and feed on each other and criticize each other and chastise each other and dictate to each other what we should shoot and how we should shoot it. Let me give you another example. I posted video. I thought I was in a ground blind, but I was in a tree stand. And I just kind of panned across where I was sitting, and as I'm panning across the scenery, you could see my crossbow sitting on the shooting rail in the ladder stand in front of me. And I had a guy post, "Are you handicapped? You better be handicapped if you're shooting that crossbow." Well, I wanted to say, "No, Charlie, I'm not going to say what I wanted to say. I could say it on the live stream, but I'm not going to say it on the air. If I choose to hunt with a crossbow, what does it matter to you? I have hunted with a recurve. I have hunted with a compound. I have hunted with a crossbow. I have hunted with a rifle. And those of you who are holier than thou who say you guys shouldn't be hunting with crossbows and you're hunting with compounds, no. If you truly believe that a crossbow gives us too much of an advantage, then you should be hunting a recurve. In fact, you should probably go out in the woods and cut down the stick and skin the bark off it, and then take some kind of a sinew from a deer you've harvested with a spear or whatever, and make a string out of it, and then make your own arrows, and then take broadheads and chip them out of stones. It's not that anybody has an unfair advantage. What it is you choose the tool that you want to hunt with because that's how you enjoy it. Plus, in my case, I want to have the best chance I can of having a quick, clean, humane killing shot. That is the goal of all ethical and moral hunters, and I think 99% of us are ethical and moral hunters. So in my case, the most enjoyable hunts I ever had were with a recurve. I got to the point where I wasn't shooting it enough to be confident in my proficiency and accuracy, so I moved along because I didn't think morally it was the right tool to use. And rather than make the intermediate jump to a compound, which I hunted with for many years, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go right to a crossbow because that maximizes my efficiency and effectiveness. Does it give me an unfair advantage? No. The only advantage with a crossbow is you don't have to draw it. I'm still shooting one arrow, and my range is no longer than it was with a compound. So let's not do this. If you find yourself looking at a post online, and this is normally where it happens because I think most people wouldn't do it in person, although we're seeing it more and more. If you see somebody taking an animal that you wouldn't because it's not up to your standards, but they have a big smile on their face, just give it a like or shake their hand or congratulate them and move on. Move on. Doesn't matter to you what they shoot. Here in Michigan, we need to be taking more deer. So if you want to hold out for that 3.5-year-old, 4.5-year-old 10-point, go ahead. But the folks who are out there, and I realize, we should be shooting more does. Everybody should be shooting more does. But if somebody's got one weekend a year to hunt, and they see a 1.5-year-old spike walk in front of them, or a 4-point or a 6 or whatever, and they decide to take it, take it. Enjoy it. Enjoy the experience. Enjoy the hunt. Enjoy the venison. And that's especially timely now since we are 1 week away from the start of the firearm season. They're not going to be the number of hunters out in the woods that there used to be. So the hunters that are out there need to take more deer. Okay. In my neck of the woods, the leaves have just about all dropped now. You can see into the woods far further than you could just a couple of weeks ago. Corn's down. The corn has been down for a while now. That's good. That should help to increase the southern Michigan harvest because you won't have the cornfields the deer can hide in. The rut is on. The rut is on. In my neck of the woods, in my part of the state. I realize that may not be the case everywhere, but in my part of the state, the rut is on. Can I give you 2 non-hunting examples? I went out I went out Monday night, sitting in a ground blind because it was blowing so hard I wouldn't want to be up in a tree or even a ladder stand. So I hunkered down into just a beautiful old ground blind that has been on this property since before we ever started to hunt it. There's a lot of tradition, a lot of history, a lot of deer have been taken out of that blind. In fact, I took a nice doe out of there last year. So I'm hunkered down in there. I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to see anything tonight, but the rut should be kicking in. If the wind dies down, maybe. Just before dark, I see an animal come across the food plot in front of me, and he's moving like a buck. But I can't put a rack on him. Even with binoculars, I couldn't put a rack on him. Besides, he's 46 yards away, too far to shoot anyway. Next morning, I wake up, and I'm going through trail cameras, and I thought, just for the heck of it, I'll check the cameras around the house. I'm looking at a camera that I have installed over our driveway, and in the middle of the night, in the city, in town, a buck comes walking across our driveway. I thought, okay, well, that's a sign that the deer are moving. I'm telling my wife, Denise, this story. During breakfast the next morning, she said, well, there's a doe in the backyard right now. And I said, I bet there's a buck around here somewhere. I looked out the window, and there's a 2.5-year-old 8-point buck standing right behind this doe in the backyard. And he's got her pinned in the corner between a house and some arborvitaes. Talk about the rut being on. And then 4 hours later, we see the same buck still chasing what I presume to be the same poor doe. And this is in town. Now, I just need to see that type of rut activity while I'm hunting, and then I'll be happy. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine show after the break, Luke Pulaski of the Outdoor Conquest talks about some great fall fishing. Then Chris Durson of Rapid River Knives. If you want to get a Rapid River knife for Christmas, I hate to start pushing this whole Christmas thing already, but now is the time to order it. In our second hour, Chad Stewart, DNR wildlife biologist, talks about the whitetail rut from the biological perspective. Then Sergeant Mike Machar, DNR conservation officer, on how to stay safe and legal during this upcoming firearm season. The Ask Avery segment answers a question about the turkeys that we traded to Ontario for moose. How are they doing? And in hour number 3, Gabe Van Warmer on making the transition from bow season to gun season. And we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. Yes, I will say things on the live stream that I won't say on the radio show. All right, my friends, have a great day. Ross, nice to have you along with us, buddy. Joe says, yeah, take it in and have it looked at, Joe. Yeah, take it in and have it looked at. Absolutely. All right, my friends, I got to go. TJ. That was a nice beaver you got the other day, buddy. Have a good day, my friends. I'll see you tonight, another edition of Wednesday Night Live.